Yeah, 50 years. I know I don't look old enough, but there we go. 50 years of anti-sexist involvement. I think we've got to be positive and say we do interesting things, and that is one of my... I should have brought the mascot suit and gone out in the suit in the street in the mascot suit, because to engage men, we've got to have fun. And we had a mascot for White Ribbon, and it was really effective in terms of engaging children. And then once children are there, then maybe their parents will tip up as well. And that means you're going to have a conversation. If you can have a conversation, you've started. That's all what it is. We also, I don't talk too much about the mascot, but we won the mascot race, which is for a mile across the jumps at Wetherby Racecourse. And there were three, we entered three mascots. And I didn't win it, but one of the lads who works with our organisation was a football referee, very fit, and he went zoom, straight through there. Anyway, that's the fun stories. And then lots of fun stories about being active. And like last night, we had I would say a men's consciousness raising group. There were three of us, and we were sitting around chatting, and it was really worthwhile and very interesting. And today, just talking to people at the back, really supportive, really reinforcing, and that's what we have to enjoy. And now I press this button. Okay. I've done squillions of talks while I was founded White Ribbon Campaign, and I was also on something called the Council of Europe, what's it, working party to end violence against men, and violence against women, men's violence against women and children. Okay, and so I've done lots of talks, but scarcely ever am I able to talk about these issues, the fact that it's actually personal stuff as well. It's about, do we do our childcare? How do we do our fatherhood and our paternity? Yeah. Do we do our share of housework? There's a postcard at the back about a housework audit. Contraception, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, and marriage. And these are all issues which have come to me and I've been working on for a long, long time. Okay, why me? And why me is always a big thing. I was lucky. You know, what did I learn from home? I learned about equality, I learned about sharing, and I learned about non-violence. My dad was a conscientious objector, and that's why, you know, I have been active in the peace movement for donkey's years. And actually, look at me, look, that's my dad, just like me, you know, bald and glasses. And stable family, you don't realise what a joy, what a privilege it is, and then what a responsibility it is as well. But then my parents in their wisdom said, I know, we'll put him in for a scholarship at a posh boys' school. So here's a posh boys' school, that's my house photograph, and I'm this chappie at the back here, in case you haven't spotted me, I'm a prefect by then. But one of the things I wanted to share with you was a letter they sent to my parents before I attended. And it said, it was from the headmaster, his mother may bring him for his uniform fitting on such and such a date. You know, and it was a letter to my father talking about what my mother should do. You know, and so we have to unlearn the patriarchy. We have to unlearn the patriarchy from going to a school like that, where, of course, there were no young women, no girls. In the UK, 750,000 children every year experience and see domestic abuse. So their experience is very, very different from my experience, which is why it then gives me a sense of responsibility because of the entitlement which I have had all my life. I was lucky enough to see a set of 50-odd slides from one of the Scottish refugees, and I've got a copy of them at home. And there's a set of slides from young people, and they were asked, what do you think about domestic violence? What do you think domestic abuse is? I think it's when your dad bosses your mum and things like shouting, and she gets scared, and so do we. And I think it's not right when your dad is that kind of dad. But where I also received a lot of my education was from learning from women that I lived with and learning from women that I loved. They told me, do your share of stuff. If you don't do your share of stuff, you can't live here anymore. I mean, simple. When I was a student, 3 men, 4 women in the household. 3 years later, for 2 years, I lived in a house with 5 women, 2 kids and me. And by God, I had to do my share of housework then. And that's probably somewhere where I learned some of my feminism. We were talking about where do you learn your feminism from? And somebody did some research about 20 years ago. It's the only research I've ever found about where do anti-sexist men come from. And this person had interviewed 12 people, God knows where she found them all, and it just happens they all hung out with anti-sexist people. And so it's sort of learning from others. And that's what we've always done. But having done my learning, I was involved in active groups in the 70s. 2 of them, they think, wow, Crèches Against Sexism and Vasectomies Against Sexism. I'm just going to read something about both of those groups. The Crèches Against Sexism organisation, there were something like 250 men involved in a dozen creche groups in all places like Liverpool, Cardiff, Bristol, Leeds, Manchester, London, Oxford, Newcastle. Lasted only about 3 years. But the Creche Network said it's an anti-sexist group that brings men into childcare so women may get into politics. One of the rules we had was if we're going to run a creche, and it was a mixed organisation that we were running the creche for, some of the men had to help with us to run the creche. We weren't going to do it for them so they could just swan about. And if it was a women-only organisation, we would run it without any problems of our own. In its busiest year, Liverpool Creche Group had 48 requests to provide creches and met 36 of them, providing 600 hours of men's creche work to organisations like community colleges, student unions, international solidarity groups, regional TUC, radical Whole Foods, blah, blah, blah. If you Google creche groups now, all you get are adverts for commercial day nursery providers. And the struggle for equality seems to be getting worse rather than better, with the trends of fathers taking paternity leave has been on a regular downward trend since 2014. Only 30% of eligible men took paternity leave in 2019. It keeps falling, it keeps falling. The Creche Group's newsletter said that the workers will be the first to admit that the guidance they take, the childcare needs we meet, have come primarily from the modern women's movement. The origin of a creche group can usually be traced to a particular demand on men by feminists, or to those men who have been reading feminist literature. It is no accident that the groups are linked by overlapping membership with men's consciousness raising and therapy groups. Doing creches and exhorting men to take responsibility for childcare are political acts that change men. When providing a creche for a mixed organisation, we typically expect the host organisation to provide men to work with us. Also, there you see reference to the vasectomy group. Again, short-lived, but existence, and we produced a leaflet which said, why should women always be responsible for contraception? It's picture of two women talking to each other. She's right. I'm sick of messy creams and gels, painful IUDs and dangerous pills. Besides, we're the ones who have to deal with unwanted pregnancies. Wake up to yourself. Contraception is a political issue. Free, safe vasectomy on demand. National Anti-Sexist Men's Conference was 1984. No, there's been a few. There were 32 men at this one, and again, the national conference. And we agreed a statement of commitments. Rigorous consciousness raising, supporting the women's liberation movement, supporting gay liberation, sharing childcare, learning from gay and feminist culture, acting on our own behalf instead of just being reactive all the time, outreach programs, linking with other anti-sexist men's groups, and renouncing violence. However, those commitments were rejected by the conference. So much for a unified men's movement, because there were some political men in there saying these are the commitments we want, and there were some other people there who were a bit more into the growth side, and they were the majority. 32 men, but a bit like today, we are it, we are the pioneers. If you look on the other side, the hopes poster is written at the start of the event. What do you hope to happen for this event? And it had some of the following written up. Sharing sorrow, sharing joy. Something unbelievably good. Insight. And maybe a bit like this weekend. Somebody said, I hope to get through it. So, lots of good things. Something unbelievably good. Now, very quick. The Anti-Sexist Men's newsletter and these copies of Achilles Heel and the Anti-Sexist Men's newsletter are all available either in the British Library or from the Feminist Library. You probably have to go there to actually look at them, but they're all in there. But my favourite, I didn't even write very much for them, but I was into the propaganda and the activism. And I produced a poster nicked from, and it was lots of my ideas. I take the ideas from other people, and it's the Penisol, the men's contraceptive. Judy Small, who's a folk singer, on her album One Voice in the Crowd, sang a song all about this. So I took the details of it and reprised it for the back page of the Men's Anti-Sexist newsletter. The Penisol, the latest breakthrough in men's contraception. A parasol pushed into the head of the penis and down into the scrotum by means of a plunger. Occasionally the scrotum is perforated, but this is disregarded since it's known that the male has few nerve endings in this area of his body. Of 1,500 students studied, 56 experienced nausea, 40 swelling of the tissues, and 20 became impotent. Common complaints included cramps, bleeding, and abdominal pain. These symptoms may disappear within a year. The Penisol has proved to be 100% effective in preventing production of sperm and eminently satisfactory to women since it does not interfere with their sexual gratification. The description was accompanied by appropriate graphics. And of course people respond to that thinking, oh my God, but it's black humour trying to get messages across. And it's exactly some of the symptoms which women experience in terms of contraception. That's why we had a contraception working party. That's why we did this work. Just before the conference started, we were talking about marriage. And that is my marriage certificate at the bottom there. I married someone who I had no idea who they were because it was an immigration thing for them. And that was my attitude to marriage. I was thinking, if any luck, I will become the most married man in Britain, but I didn't pursue it very much because actually, it was just a huge patriarchal institution, which Women lose personality, they lose rights, they lose possessions. In some cultures, they are just a procreation machine. Another one of my early, this is 1970s, 1980s, I was in 4 different men's groups during the course of my life, all relatively short-lived, but this is the topic sessions for one of them. Attitudes to feminism, violence and aggression, how to be in a couple, you can read them yourselves. But they're all a bit dry, they're all a bit tedious. We needed to have more fun as well. And one thing I did do which was fun was being involved in an organisation called Cocktails, the men's version of Vagina Monologues. And here we are. Only 2 performances for Cocktails, unfortunately. So there's a similar organisation called Men's Stories Collective in the US, designed to enable men to tell stories from their lives. And the Cock and Bull stories, or Cocktails, took months to assemble and choose the stories. And there was a group of about a dozen men involved, which led to 2 performances of the Stories Collective in Hebden Bridge Trades Club. And they were both very well sold out, they're both very successful, but then it just went oomph. The original leaflet invited men to write or collect monologues on the theme of men and masculinity based on personal experience. And it's a little bit like a written down consciousness raising. We need to do more of talking about these things. The idea, inspired by Vagina Monologues, and it was performed locally. These new men's monologues aim to explore the theme of what makes a man. The monologues were collected but never published, unfortunately. Performed but never published. Topics suggested for contributions were love, sex, erections, wet dreams, impotence, orgasm, loneliness, housework, birth, fighting, shyness, coming out, AIDS, tantric sex, prostate cancer, pub talk, bravery, weakness, circumcision, fatherhood, paying for sex, rent boys, homosexuality, sex change, the barber's shop. The list, it was quite a long list, but it was I still have the stuff at home. I wasn't very active in assembling them, but I said, I'll take those archives. So I've still got those archives at home. And the disappointing thing was only 2 performances, because men talking is a really good way to do stuff about improving the movement. And takes us on to Achilles Heel, which is going to be my last slide before you do some stuff. Okay? Achilles Heel. The very first issue of Achilles Heel, which is called a magazine for changing men, and was probably the longest serving of all the anti-sexist activities, said, for all of us, it's a process of making public a very private and very important experience. Consciously redefining and changing the nature of our relationships with women and with each other as men. In making this experience public, and in beginning to develop an analysis around it, we are in a sense coming out politically as men and realigning ourselves with women and gay movements in the struggle against sexual oppression. Over the years, the strapline of the magazine changed to include a magazine of men's politics, an anti-sexist men's magazine, 4 men's anti-sexist politics, 4 changing men, and the radical men's magazine. I was a member of the collective for 2 years, but I wasn't really interested in writing for the magazine. There were plenty of men who wanted to do that. What mattered to me was the message out there and expanding the readership. So I paid for some postcard, I paid for some merchandise, I paid for some mugs in the hope that this would increase our visibility. It didn't really. We reached about 2,000 as circulation, and there were 24 issues altogether, which is kind of good, but not good enough. And so now, one of the girlfriends of one of the guys who was one of the founders said this, and this is one of the other things that's rested with me all my life. It's all very well, you and your anti-sexist men's group talking about yourself, sitting around admiring your navels. If you really want to be anti-sexist, do something concrete. Organise a crèche, organise money for the women's minibus. And that was from 1990. So it did come out for about 12 or 14 years. But doing something practical. Imagine a world without violence against women. There's the question. What would it be like? I'm looking for some adjectives.
Safe.
That's a good one to start. More. Come on.
Productive.
Eh?
Productive.
Productive.
Yeah.
Come on.
Peaceful.
Right, that one.
Fair.
Fair. Two more.
Respectful.
One more.
Fun.
Yay! You can't know. You've already contributed, so you can't have another go. So somebody else has to. That's one more.
Fun.
They are some of the words which people have come up with before. Peaceful, fair, safe. Hey, actually did pretty well. Respectful, exciting, happy, wonderful. Who doesn't want to live in that world? Somebody once said, normal. And I thought, that really rocks me back. I said, bloody right. Why are we living in this bizarre times when it's not normal to live in a safe, peaceful, happy, equal, exciting, wonderful world? What prevents us living in that world?
Misogyny.
Ah, now, fortunately, I've just written lots about misogyny, so I can now spell it. Okay, that's a bit of a catch-all. Anything more specific?
Education.
Poor education, yeah. Yeah.
Opportunities.
Go on.
Selfishness.
Government policy.
That's interesting. Yeah. Top down.
Do you want me to move mine?
No, it's interesting.
You might need more room.
we
A
will.
lot of...
Take it back. Have it back.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have it later on.
These
But okay. Right. That'll do. I mean, somebody always says men. But I mean, that misogyny is about men, isn't it? Okay.
Can I add empathy? Because I do think someone said selfishness, which I think is important. Selfishness and empathy, because I think what's the motivation for anyone to change? And I think something like porn.
Self-interest.
Yeah, and I think something like porn really does like teach a societal suspension of empathy towards women.
Okay. There we are. Sorry, it's in red. What prevents it? Coming up with the same sort of words there. Self-interest. Yeah, selfishness. Okay. So, the last question. Simple enough. What are we going to do? Offers?
Start acknowledging it. I mean, seeing it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Witness. Whatever. Cool.
Learning better coping skills.
Two more.
Education, like informing people how to change.
Yeah. Okay. One more.
Challenging it.
Ooh.
Calling
it out.
misogyny out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not so many, but there we've got them all again. I mean, it really is. You know, you're shouting out stuff which I've already got on the slide. Hey, is this magic or what? You know, self-education, challenging, and change. You know, wow, change. In terms of us doing self-education, challenging, and change, I'm now going to spend 5 minutes, 2 lots of 5 minutes, talking about White Ribbon and talking about Male Allies Challenging Sexism and what we've done, and what we've achieved, and what we still need to do. I haven't even gone there yet, but hopefully that might come out of it. Okay, and fundamentally, what do we need to do? We need to ask women what they think, listen to what they say, and respect that response by doing something about it. I don't know if you know Bob Peace. He's been around for donkey's years. He's got grey hair as well. He says what we need to do is we need to do stuff about it. It's our responsibility. Each particular incident of violence, we could have changed the culture to make it less likely to have happened. So it's about political change. Somebody said government policy, and actually top-down stuff, but also changing ourselves, changing our hearts, changing the culture in which we operate. 20 years ago, I read about an organisation in Canada called White Ribbon, and I thought, that sounds a bit interesting. And the point about White Ribbon, simple messaging, it's got a simple slogan, which is, oh, hang on, I'll give Cummy 20 quid if anybody can repeat to me the White Ribbon mantra, the White Ribbon logo. No. See, that just shows there is so much work still to be done. Here we are all activists, and we don't know that that is fundamentally all White Ribbon is about. The pledge, never to commit, never to excuse, or never remain silent about men's violence against women. Simple, and I absolutely believe in keeping messages simple. Support the good people, don't like the bad people. It's not hard. And one of the ways I love we did White Ribbon work was to involve sports. So here we have, and to involve fatherhood as well, you see. So somebody who's just won a big award, wearing his White Ribbon rugby shirt, with his son who's wearing a sticker on his rugby shirt as well. Absolutely on the button. There are at least 8 organisations there, all of which are by and large male-run, to challenging men's violence against women. There's a slight problem though. They've all got about 1 employee, if that, or no employees, and that's the problem. The tiny size of all these organisations. The only ones which are big are ones which have UN money, like Men Engage. So all those organisations, Beyond Equality, the Fatherhood Institute, Men to Stop Rape, and I just so happen to put in the middle there, MACS and White Ribbon. So, the way White Ribbon tried to do it, we tried to do five different things. Influence change, have a massive accreditation and ambassador policy through involving lots of other organisations, because with 2 people running an organisation, you're not going to change the world, but with 500 ambassadors, you might be able to start changing things. Getting hundreds of thousands of people to sign that pledge, that promise that we just talked about just then. Campaigning to support women's organisations, and doing awareness. Every time we did fundraising, it was also tagged as an awareness raising campaign as well. So, influencing change. These are some of the people who we've got to actually, guys, this slide is looking a bit dated these days. Most of the people are retired. I don't think any of them are dead yet, so that's a good sign. Oh yes, there he is, the bottom man. There we are, dead. Oh,
yep.
Pope. I should have been in that picture, but I was out doing other things in Australia instead. That is the Italian White Ribbon campaign, presenting the Pope with a white ribbon rugby shirt. There's a little white ribbon on it there, you can just see it, and a plaque which said, ironically, you might almost say, all faiths united, or faiths united against violence against women and girls. I mean, there's all sorts of contradictions in there, but, you know, I tend to gloss over the difficult stuff like that and just say, look, they're going in the right direction, let's work with them. Theresa May wearing a white ribbon badge to a test match. It wasn't even an event. She was just wearing it at a gig. The UK ambassadors to the United Nations, various other MPs and stuff like that, and la 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 la. But the whole point there is about influencing change. So people were talking about government policy. So it's one way to do government policy is by trying to talk to people in government and do stuff like that. And we had an all-party parliamentary group. There's a very effective all-party parliamentary group on domestic abuse run by Women's Aid, serviced by Women's Aid, do a really good job. But the point of having a white ribbon APPG was to try and get some bloody men to do something, because no men ever go to the APPG about domestic abuse. You know, no. But so we would target, they all go to the other ones they're interested in, like the beer companies and the rugby league federation and stuff like that. So we thought having one just for men, but God, it was like blood out of a stone to get anybody to go to it. But it was so important to try. So important to try. There we are. So there's the APPG and what was... There we are. And that's the APPG in action. They are both parliamentarians doing something there. Okay, and with an APPG banner. Blah, blah, blah. Branding, doing lots of that stuff. I particularly like this one. This is Christmas decorations across a town square, because they stay up for weeks and weeks at a time. And also, that's a particular time when violence against women and girls is particularly bad. Everybody's, people, we don't make an excuse for it, but the explanation is people are stressed out, financial problems and stuff like that. Christmas. So let's talk about love and respect, and we've got our logo in the corners as well. Perfect stuff. Okay. So, accreditation and multiplier. Instead of having 2 people with a little budget of about 100 grand, if we work with accredited organisations, we've got staff of 1.5 million people in those organisations who are all being told by somebody in their organisations that they need to be doing stuff about men's violence. Spending power, if they can then work that out to organisations who supply them and say, actually, we think you should also be doing this sort of thing. You're just spreading the influence. Okay, and I'll explain how that works a little bit. Here we are, Blackpool Council. I've still got a good relationship with them, even though I haven't been anything to do with White Ribbon for about the last 6 years. Blackpool Council, they do through their own local authority employees, through the hospital, through the religious communities, through Blackpool College. I was there last year, talked to 600 students, boom, because one-off talks don't do much use, but I still do them just because that's the only thing we do. So lots and lots, and for me, the icing on the cake was a huge tableau at the end of the illuminations which are seen by 2.5 million people. And that's the point. I'm not interested in doing stuff with little groups of 1,000. That's why I stopped doing Achilles Heel. It has to be, if we're going to affect change, it has to be mass involvement. So we had this ambassadors campaign. Who are the ambassadors? All sorts of people from all walks of life, blah, 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 all those sorts of folk. Oops. And interestingly, people said, why am I an ambassador? Because of these reasons. Okay, so those people did it, and the sorts of people we wanted to pledge. We didn't want just all those personalities, all those famous people, all those politicians and stuff. We want people from the local housing association, people from choirs, firefighters, motorcyclists, cricketers, rugby players, you know, as well as the celebrities. This guy on the end is famous. I don't know who he is, but do you know who he is? Somebody might know who he is. He's a very famous actor from somewhere around there as well. Okay, and that's some of the celebrity stuff.
Paul Weller.
Oh, there we are. So you knew who he was. Oh, yeah. Okay. There's another picture of him there. So I obviously liked him. But for me, it's just quite useful to get people to wear an emblem, and it made quite a difference. And then we collected lots of individual pledges. And that looks really impressive. All these people have said, look, I pledge never to commit, never to excuse, and never to remain silent about men's violence against women and girls. Except they forget the never to remain silent, which is the problem. These people who are ambassadors, these people who are out-pledged and should be out there going, yeah, I'm going to do some work about it, yeah, I'm going to do stuff. And what you really need is to keep badgering them and supporting them, to keep pushing the message out. And that's the biggest question for me is, why don't men keep going with it? And campaigning, different campaigns for music, sport, education, trade unions, companies and faith groups. So there we are, and lots of merchandise. I've always been king of merchandise. Look at that, different badges for music groups, actors, footballers, police forces, trade unionists, firefighters, cricketers, blah, blah, blah. So, I've got 5 minutes to talk about MACS. Okay, 5 minutes to talk about MACS. What MACS does. Björn should be up here talking about this, but I think this is all inclusive here. We support other people's initiatives doing work. We go to events, and also we've helped support financially in a very limited way, but to the best of our ability, women's activities, both there's an organisation called Hearts for Murdered Women, who we've bought materials for off, and there's of course the speakers this afternoon who will be talking about their work, and we help pay for their film. And we do self-education. We've got a brilliant book group, and I remember our first ever conference, somebody was sneering about us having a book group, and I actually thought, it's really worth it. It was really worthwhile, because for 3 years it's kept going, and we have shared, I don't know, a dozen, 2 dozen interesting texts as being education. And this conference itself, this is the 3rd or 4th. 4th, because we have one online. Yeah. National conference. And it's important because we are doing the work. And we go out and do speaking events. Anybody will invite us, and produce educational and awareness materials as well. There we are. These are the fundraising donations we've done. And quite proud of that one. MACS, here we are. We've raised 40,000 quid for women entrepreneurs under something called, what's it called? Eh? Lend with Care. Thank you. Yes, I do the admin, so I should really remember that. And that just circles round and round and round. Some of our postcards, which are all at the back and need to be taken away. We don't want to take any away with us. We want them all to be out there. They're no use in my attic or Björn's attic. We want them out there on people's notice boards. And there we are. There's a list of the books, just a fraction of the books that we've read. And a brilliant conference going on the 11th and 12th of October in Brighton. Wow, can't miss that. Okay. Some of the campaign we do is we've got a particular postcard about housework, and it's got a housework audit, which was very interesting. There we are. That's my last slide. That will work. But I will just move on to the next one. You know, wearing badges is not enough. We've got to do a ton of other stuff as well. You know, so we try doing our self-education. We try doing our campaigning events. We do fundraising and speaking. We are Male Allies Challenging Sexism. We've got to do it. And so it's great to have people here. It's really supportive to have people in the same room. And I hope that we will all go out and do radical things for the rest of the day, for tomorrow, and for the rest of the year. Thank you very much.